We've already talked about how to form two commands, right? So we know how to form a command with two. We know how to form the affirmative command, and we know how to make a negative command with two. We use two when you're talking to one person and you want to be informal, okay? So our formula for a positive two command was more or less the L form of the present tense, with some exceptions. Die Asponissalten, wenn wir ise, those were our exceptions. Our negative two command was formed with the yo form of the present tense minus the o plus the opposite vowel and an s. Okay? Today we're going to look at bossing other people around. So we're going to start with usted. We use usted when you're talking to one person but you want to be more formal. So if you want to boss someone you respect around. That sounds like an odd situation, and honestly it doesn't happen much. If I were in that situation, I would be more likely to use the podría that we used earlier to avoid the command, but sometimes it happens, so you should know about that. And then an ustedes command. And then for a little bit, we're not going to focus on it a lot, but we're going to mention nosotros. So ustedes you're going to use when you want to command multiple people at the same time to do something. That happens a lot. The nosotros command you're going to use when you're part of a group and you want to get the group to do something. Like, and the translation in English would be let's. Let's do this. Okay? So in general, all of these commands, I'm going to say, are exactly the same as the negative two command. Okay? But instead of the S, the usted form has nothing added to it. The ustedes form instead of the S takes an N. And what does the nosotros form take instead of an S? Or most, right? So pretty much the endings we always expect with these guys. So that means for all of these guys, it's going to be forma de yo menos la o más vocal opuesta más nothing for an usted command más n for an ustedes command and más mos for an ustedes command. These commands are the same for a positive and a negative. There's not a difference. So for our two commands, we have a big difference between the affirmative command and the negative command. But all these guys are the same. So if we take usted, okay, and let's take a verb like compartir. Forma de yo is comparto minus the o is compart. Más vocal opuesta, it's an AR. Compartir is an IR verb, so our opposite vowel is an A, and it's an usted command, so I'm going to leave it there. So you, usted, comparta, share something. If I want to make that command negative, all I have to do is add a no. So that's comparta and no comparta. Share, don't share. Now with regular verbs like compartir, the whole yo form doesn't make as much sense. But let's take a verb like tener, which we know to be very problematic. Oh my goodness, I wrote that twice. Tener. So tener, what's the forma de yo? Tengo, right? So tengo minus the o plus your opposite vowel is for an ER verb is what? Tenga. Good. So tenga cuidado. Be careful. Usted. That would be an appropriate command to use with an usted. Tenga cuidado, usted. And how would we say, you don't need to be careful. Don't be careful. It would be usted. No. Tenga. Same way. Tenga and no tenga. How would we turn this into an ustedes command? How do we turn tenga into an ustedes command? Just add the N. Right? So it would be tengan. Read that there. Alright, so let's look at some of the ustedes commands. Let's look at one of our new verbs. Elegir. Oops, that's elegir. Elegir. Actually, that verb's got too many irregulars. Let's skip that. We would have yo hablo menos la o. Okay? It's an AR verb, so I'm going to add e. And for ustedes, I'm going to add en. So hablen, talk. And then your negative would be no hablen. No hablen. Let's look at some spelling issues. You remember when we talked about our spelling that ka and ko have a hard k sound, but se and si have a s sound. Okay? So if we look at a verb like sacar, this is a k sound that we're making right here. Okay? So we want to maintain the k sound. So our verb, the form of the yo is saco, menos la o is sac, okay? And now it's an AR verb, so my opposite ending is for ustedes would be saquen. But when I look at the word I just wrote here, I didn't write saquen, I wrote sacen, right? Because the CE makes the S sound there. So in order to make this saquen and not sacen, I have to change the C into a QU. Ooh, you can't read the red. Looks so pretty on mine. The C changes to a QU. So, ustedes, I say it all the time, saquen la tarea. For the same problem occurs with all your verbs that end in car, all your verbs that end in gar, and all of your verbs that end in zar. Because all of those are coming from an a to the opposite vowel, which is an e, right? Our rule for the commands is opposite vowel. And so all of these that are fine with your a's and your o's are going to switch to an eh sound, so they're all going to have issues. So the C changes to a QU, the G changes to a GU, and the Z changes to a C. And that's going to be the same for your -2 command, for your positive and negative usted command, for your positive and negative ustedes command, for your positive and negative nosotros commands. So for all of those commands, it's going to happen that way. Okay, I want to look at one more odd verb, and then we'll be done with this. The verb elegir is one of our verbs this chapter, and it's got two issues. First of all, it's a stem changer e to I, like pedir. So the yo form is eli, not elech. Now, because the GI, it's elegir, it's a soft H sound. But what would happen if I used the G from your stem and put the yo form with an O? I wouldn't have elijo, I would have eligo, right? Because the GO makes a different sound than the GI. So on this verb in the present tense, the yo form doesn't have a che, it has a jota. It has a jota. And since we form our command from this verb, when we drop the O from the form of the yo, then we're going to add your ending. So it's opposite vowel, IR verb, we're going to add an A. So elija usted, elijan ustedes, elijamos, nosotros. So your irregulars with the ustedes and the usted commands are going to be the same as your regulars with the two commands. They're the ones that don't follow the rules. So remember our form of the yo minus the o. So the irregulars for all of these are ones with the yo form that doesn't end in o. Okay? So we have words like soy, doy, voy, estoy, and yo sé, I know. Or actually the one you use more often, no sé, right? So these verbs were irregular in the two negative commands, and they're the same but with an N or without the N there. So ser, the negative two command was no seas, so your usted command is going to be sea, and your ustedes command is going to be sean, or no sea, or no sean, right? For dar, your two negative command was no des, and so your usted command, drop the S, is de. Now this word de looks like the other day. The other day means of, but this day doesn't. So if we think back to all of the other examples that we mentioned today, which one gets the accent, the verb or the other word? The verb. So we want to differentiate two words that look exactly like, the verb gets the accent. So the usted command would be de and no de, and the ustedes command would be den. Now there's no other word that's den, so that one doesn't need an accent. What was our two negative command for ear? No vayas. So here we have usted, vaya, and ustedes, vayan. Estar was no estés, so here we have este. Now let's look at the syllables on this. It ends in a vowel, so your stress should be on the second to last. Is it este, the verb, or este? Este. So it's a rule breaker, so it gets marked with an accent. And the ustedes command, esten. Accent still here, still should be on the second one, so it's still a rule breaker, so it also has an accent. And then our last verb, ser, I don't know if we've talked about it a lot with two command, but it's sepa and sepan. And once again, to make any of these negatives, you just add a no in front. The last thing I want to talk about is how to put pronouns on these guys. So the pronoun placement for any positive commands, you need to do two things. First, the pronoun is placed at the end as part of the word. So together it makes one long word with the pronoun at the end. But the other thing you need to do is you need to maintain the original stress. Maintain original stress. So what does that mean? We'll talk about it a little bit more next class. But if we look at a command like refrescarse. So your command would be, for ustedes, would be refresquen, Q-U-E. Okay? Now when we look at this word, it's got two syllables, one for this vowel pair and another here. All of our commands follow the rules. So it's refresquen. So our stress is where it's supposed to be here on the second to last syllable. But once I add the pronoun to the end of it, so this se has a pronoun that goes on the end, it moved what was the second syllable back to the third syllable back. Okay, our rules, it ends in an eh, it should be on two. It's not. It's now breaking the rule because we have to maintain that original stress. So now it needs an accent. Refresquense. Otherwise, you'd have to say now that it's spelled differently, refresquense. So you're going to add the accent, if necessary, to maintain that original stress. So those are our positive command pronoun placements. Our negative commands are a lot easier. It goes no, and then pronoun, and then the verb, the negative command. So that same command would be no se refresquen. 3 words, 3 different things. We didn't upset the balance of the vowel, so it's all set. These are the same with our reflexive pronouns, with our direct object pronouns, with our indirect object pronouns. They all get smushed on the back there.